In our next segment, we're going to talk about a physical disorder involving the forcible closure of the eyelids. It's referred to as BEB, and it stands for benign essential Blepharospasm. That's a tough word. It's a variably progressive neurological dysfunction in the motor control center of the brain. Now, to make all that sound like real English, joining me now from the Columbus area is Anita Croce, the North Central District Director of the BEB Research Foundation. Anita's going to help us learn about this medical problem. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for driving up from Columbus.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, now, as hard as it is to pronounce, BEB has been that hard to diagnose.
Yes, and many patients have been sent to numerous doctors over the years. As a matter of fact, my particular case, it took 5 years to be diagnosed. Our foundation was first formed in 1981 by a patient herself who was frustrated and finally got the doctors interested. She formed support groups around the country and international conferences, which are still held yearly. And this year it'll be held in Birmingham, Alabama. I might mention that the support groups are great for the patient because this gives them an opportunity to not only know that they're not alone. Our support groups are not just for the patient, but also for family and everyone else that is involved.
People who are interacting with the person with
Correct.
BEB. Well, what I found fascinating thank you for helping us learn some material about this, that this was first described in a North American Medical Journal in 1895, but they described it as a psychological problem, not as a physiological problem.
Correct. And many patients have actually been sent to the psychiatrist, have been in a mental hospital, have even been given shock treatment. And then I have been present at meetings where doctors have come forth and admitted that they made an error, they gave us the wrong medication, and they were sorry. And so I think this is important for people to realize that there is a treatment, not a cure, and that it is not psychological. It is a neurological problem, but often our ophthalmologists as well as neurologists will give the Botox injections or myoblock injections to the patient, which helps to force the eyelid open. Otherwise, we are blinded by our eyelids, not by sight.
So it's not a condition of blindness because the cornea or the inside, it's actually the fact that you can't open your eyes.
Our eyelids actually close very forcibly. It feels like a Charlie horse in your eyes. And in the early stages prior to being diagnosed, there might be burning, itching, numerous symptoms within the eye, and photophobia is also that comes along with it. In other words,
aversion to bright light.
Yes,
very
light sensitive. Yes.
And then even watching television or reading can be a problem?
You cannot watch television often. I have finally began to watch television. I now can play the piano again. I can do some reading. The eyes will tire easily, but then there are people that go through different stages before they reach that point of being able to do that. There are little tips and tricks that we learn at our support group meeting, which helps the patient to cope with the disorder.
Now, this is primarily discovered. I mean, you tend to get it in your 40s, but some younger people and some older people do. I mean, it's not, once you're past your 40s, you're not out of the time frame. But what I found interesting, too, was that 2 to 3 women get this disease for every 1 man who gets it.
It's more common among women. We do have men, and I was in my 40s when I came down with it, and I certainly wasn't ready for it. And but I figured that it's better to do something with the disorder since I'm being treated than sit back in a rocking chair. So I hope that by appearing on your program that we can reach others that have this disorder, and they may not even realize that we have a research foundation and support groups and doctors that can treat this.
Now, and I know that they'll bring up the website and information later in this interview, and it's also going to be at our website. So if people are concerned or would like some more information, that's a good place to start. What kinds of treatments, you mentioned, what are the general kinds of treatments that people undergo when this happens to them that help?
At the present time, the treatment of choice is the Botox, which is botulinum toxin A, okay? And then we have another treatment known as myoblock, which is botulinum toxin B. There, at the present time, is some research being done on another treatment, which I don't believe is out yet, which I will say is Dysport. But they use this in another country, and I know my doctor in Columbus, Ohio, has been experimenting with it. I don't know at the present time what the results are. He will be speaking about this at my support group meeting in May, so I will hear more about this.
So this is basically, Botox is this thing that is sort of a vanity treatment by a lot of people. So I think those people sitting out here who have never heard of BEB probably going, I know what Botox is. But in this case, it's an actual medical appropriate use of it.
Yes, we were one of the first foundations that wrote to FDA and the President and all the congressmen and senators to have Botox approved for medical use. And, you know, if people choose to use it for wrinkles, that's one thing. But we use it for sight. In other words, sight, and I also have, I might mention, Meige syndrome, which is spasms throughout the face, the nose, the chin, and my mouth may be pulled to one side due to the spasms. I don't want to fail to mention that in the support group, we have people who have hemifacial spasm, which is spasms on one side of the face, maybe just in one eye, half of the face, or they may have apraxia of eyelid opening, which is a little different than blepharospasm. Apraxia of eyelid opening, they cannot push their eyelids open. I mean, the eyelid drops and often doesn't spasm, where with blepharospasm, it spasms and clamps shut, and that's the difference.
And you mentioned briefly when we started, if you don't treat this, you can't see. I mean, this is not something that is an optional thing. You really need to address it. If you think you have it, you need to pursue the medical answers for it.
Right. Now, I might mention there are different degrees of this, and when I came down with it, I was functionally blind. I used a cane and to find my way through the house. It took 5 years to be diagnosed. This was in the early years, and we pioneers have done a lot of legwork to hopefully find some of the others and spare them the misery that maybe we went through. For 6 months, I couldn't even push my eyelids open with my fingers, so it was very difficult. I might share that I do understand what it feels like to be blind when there's also the Charlie horse going on in the eye and the burning and the itching along with it. Now, not everyone gets this bad because, fortunately, we have educated many doctors and many patients, and they seem to find their way to a doctor that can treat it.
And not call it a psychological disorder and send them to a psychiatrist. We should mention again that we're going to put it up on the website, but you have a website, you have a phone number people can call, and an email address that people can send to. So there is a place for information, and it at least is a place to get started. And as you say, there are groups and others who can help you learn a little bit more about it.
Right, and our foundation will, as soon as I get the name of a patient, I put them in touch with their state coordinator in their state. I'm over 11 states, but I also know the other district directors. There are 4 of us across the country, and we have area representatives, and so therefore we put them in touch with their state coordinator, area representative, as well as the foundation. The foundation, in turn, will mail them an informative packet of material, and any doctor or nurse who's interested will receive material that's geared toward their knowledge.
Well, this is really important because it is the kind of thing that people can misdiagnose or perhaps just begin to get and not realize it's serious. Thank you so much, Anita, for being on and explaining a lot about this and for sharing your experiences as well. I really appreciate that. I think a lot of people will learn from this.
I thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's okay. It was a great session. I think some people learned something. Thank you.